You started writing a book, but it is actually still sitting in a draft on your computer, hidden away among other files and project ideas that you haven't yet gotten to. And when you come across it, you pause, the memories, the great ideas resurface, the desire to see your name on the cover of a book. It just warms your spirit, but only for a moment before that overwhelm takes over, before the voice in your head starts reminding you of the laundry list of other projects that need to be finished before you can even think about stopping long enough to write a book. And if you're anything like me, you also begin to spiral into shame around why you haven't finished this book yet, that this is yet another unfinished great idea that you had and didn't execute on. If this is you, welcome. I'm Dr. Carolyn Wiley, founder of Rose and Pearl Publishing. And here on the Publish Pearl podcast, we turn authorities into authors. You see, there's a reason that your book project feels so big, like it is something lovely that you would never, though, be able to finish without a generous advance that allows you to retreat into a mountain cabin with steaming cups of hot tea and coffee sitting next to you while a fire crackles in the hearth. And it's not because you're too busy. It's not because you lack discipline or don't know how to execute on a project. I mean, you are a leader after all. You have executed on hundreds of projects. So all of that is just lies. It's also not because you just need to sit down and write, and then the book will magically be done and ready for publishing. You see, having an advance and a cabin full of unlimited time never actually produces a book. There's only one thing that does produce a book. And in this episode, we're going to unpack what that key component is so that you never have to go down the shame spiral or spend time wishful thinking again. You see, most high capacity leaders I work with, they all begin the same way. They have a desire to write, maybe one that's even been there since childhood, but they put it off to pursue other dreams and build platforms, businesses. And then when it comes to publishing a book, they see other leaders with maybe even less experience, and their books are going out, and they think, wait, I should be doing this. So they open a Word document and begin. You pour your thoughts onto the page. And at first it feels energizing, feels like there's movement, passion, momentum. But usually within days, that document starts to feel like your junk room that has ideas everywhere and how to develop sections and rewritten introductions, notes to self in the margin, maybe a working title that doesn't quite fit, but you don't know why it doesn't. Maybe you even move over to Canva and you play with cover mock-ups to get you excited and motivated, and that works for about 20 minutes. And then you tuck it all away and you get back to your real work of your business. And that draft languishes, sitting still in that file drawer, waiting for someday. And for someone who runs a business, who closes clients, who executes launches, hits revenue goals, if there's something sitting there incomplete, it feels foreign, even threatening. You feel like, well, I can lead an entire team of people. I can run a successful company. Why can't I do this one thing? It should be simple. I mean, after all, I write all the time. I write documents. I write curriculum. I write emails. This should not be this hard. So you close the document and tell yourself, well, you'll come back to it when things slow down. You'll come back to it when you have more time. And you pretend it isn't sitting there unfinished because that creates an unsettled feeling that you hate. So you shift the narrative to, I'm not writing a book. I'll write it when the time is right. But every time you see an ad for a publisher or one of your colleagues announces their new book launch, it hits you like a punch in the gut because you know that should be you. So let me unpack what's actually been happening to you, because something that I believe will erase those feelings of guilt and incompleteness and help you actually make progress on your book is very simple. It's the truth that you're not failing at writing a book. You were never taught how to build one. I mean, think about it. In school, we have fabulous English teachers, right? But they give us the topic. They give us the audience, usually them. They give us the assignment. It's defined. It has parameters. You know what font to use. Everything is clearly designed. All you have to do is respond. And so you learned to respond. And in fact, you probably learned to respond really well. And in business, you learned the same thing. I see the problem, I analyze the problem, and I respond. I learned to move fast and to execute. In fact, as a person of faith, in church, you even learn that obedience looks like action. But no one has taught you that when it comes to a book, the first stage of a book doesn't look like action. It looks like clarity. It looks like thought. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What does that first stage of a book, the one before you start writing, actually look like? Because we're going to break apart that model that you've been shown. When you see your colleagues' books and you think, I can write one, and so you start there with the writing, that's actually skipping this primary stage. You see, in a signature book, the one that's going to anchor your authority and integrate it into your entire business ecosystem, you have to begin with designing infrastructure, not writing drafts. And again, most leaders unintentionally sabotage themselves here. We start with the draft when we haven't yet defined the assignment. Okay, if you're building, you wouldn't begin building a room before you've drawn the blueprint. It's the same thing with working on a book. So when I say assignment, I don't mean a vague sense that God told you to write a book. Now, I'm not dismissing that nudge. In fact, I believe deeply that you should respond to it. But obedience is not the same thing as stewardship and strategy. See, when God entrusts us with something, He expects us to be obedient, but He expects us to steward that assignment well, not just scribble something on a Word doc. Our assignment answers the questions that you weren't trained to ask because they were already provided to you as answers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at how not to throw out a half-baked draft, but to steward your message from a built infrastructure. So what do those questions even look like? Well, first of all, who is this book actually for? And don't respond with, well, for leaders or Christians or everyone. That's not specific. We need the actual person in your world wrestling with something you're already uniquely equipped to address. You also want to look at what transformation is this book responsible for? When your reader closes the final page, what must be true about them now that was not true before they opened the book? How does this book integrate into your business, into your leadership? Does it prepare someone for your highest level offer? Does it qualify them in some way to even want it or need it? Does it shorten the trust and nurture cycle for the buyer? Does it open doors to those stages whose doors are currently closed to you? And maybe even most importantly, does it answer the question, why now? Why is this message so important in this season of life, in the world, in your leadership? These are some of the specific questions that you need to answer so that your draft doesn't feel chaotic. Not because you lack clarity as a thinker. I mean, come on, you wouldn't be where you are today if you weren't able to think clearly and articulate your ideas. Your draft's chaotic because you haven't designed it yet. So if we slow down and design the book first, something will shift almost immediately. The book stops feeling like some random floating idea and will start feeling like a structured asset that you need to execute on. And then therefore, the chapters will begin to reveal themselves. You'll no longer feel that urge to say everything you know, because you will understand what this book is responsible for telling. More importantly, what this book is not responsible for saying. See, that right there will reduce the overwhelm by half. It's only after you have all of this clarity around exactly what this book is to do, what is its job, then and only then do you move into the rough draft. I mean, think about it. If you're going to hire somebody to do a job, you're going to have it clearly laid out of exactly what you want them to do, how you want them to do it, when they're supposed to start, what the outcome is supposed to look like at the end. Same thing when you write a book. Start with the assignment, not the rough draft. And here's the part that actually surprises the leaders that I work with. Drafting will become so much easier once you take the time to do this part well. But it doesn't become instantly perfect. It's still going to be a hot mess. It should be. Because the mess is what helps us get through to the beautiful product. Because those gorgeous books that you are reading and studying by thought leaders in the industry right now once looked like that same hot mess. You just don't see that, nor should you. But you have to know that they went through that process before it ever got to that professionally polished version that you're holding in your hands. And when you realize that, then the mess is freeing. The mess allows you to play. It allows creativity to flow. It's not going to threaten your identity and make you think, wait, how can I, a thought leader, be putting out something that looks this terrible and is completely incoherent? Because you realize, oh no, wait, that's just the process. You're not wondering, you're constructing. And you know exactly what room you're in and what that room, or in this case, chapter, is supposed to contain. You know what doesn't belong in that room. And you stop dumping ideas at random into a document, hoping that it ends up as a book. But you begin intentionally building something that has a specific direction and a defined function. That is the difference between deciding to write a book and intentionally building one. And once you experience the difference, you're never going to go back to staring at that blank page again. Now, before I turn you loose with feeling clear and thinking, yes, thanks, I got it, I'm going to go run and do this right now, let me remind you, what made the difference and created this clarity in you was not some motivational speech. It was structure and support. I told you exactly what was happening, why it was happening, and gave you specific direction on how to do it differently. There was a guide telling you what you needed to do. So if you abandon that structure and you try to sprint, the chaos will return and probably return faster than you expect. So once again, you'll end up running out of steam. You'll find your book languishing in the projects pile instead of doing the job you've now assigned it to do. And I want you to know your book cannot afford to be delayed any longer. There are speaking opportunities for 5-figure invitations that are not going to say yes without a book attached to your name. There are high-ticket clients who need a deeper level of trust before they're willing to invest at that level. And a book speeds up that trust in a way no Instagram carousel ever will. So losing even one of these opportunities is a 5-figure loss. Over the course of a year, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars that should have been in your bank account and aren't. And now if you're thinking, But I'm not doing it for the money. Well, good. I hope you aren't. But money is a signal of the impact that you're having. If a conference says, hey, we'll pay you $5,000 to come and deliver a keynote speech, that's a sign that they believe your words will have a greater than $5,000 impact on their audience. So this isn't about money for money's sake or to get rich. It's about using money as a clear measure of the impact that your words will actually be having in people's lives. And we are here to make the most impact that we possibly can for the kingdom of God. So my mission is providing authors that structure so that their books go from these someday projects to actually impacting revenue and lives. That's why I created the Christian Writers Arise program. And to get you started, I would love to gift you my Right Start Guide at roseandpearl.net/get started. It walks you through the assignment stage, the part most leaders skip, so that you stop trying to build a book with no structure. And in fact, if you want to see this clarity process in action, watch the Clarity Before Chapters episode that I'll have linked, where I walk through these foundational questions with you step by step. Start there. Build first, draft second. Because you don't start writing a book. You build one from an assignment. And once you do, the writing will become the simplest part of the process. Now, if this episode helped you take that next step toward writing your book, please let us know in the comments what you're writing about. I'd love to cheer you on. And send this to another leader that you know needs to write their book as well. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel to get more content like this in your feed. And until next time, I'm Dr. Carolyn Wiley, and you have been watching The Published Pearl.